Welcome to the Chess Channel, the channel where you can learn loads. Today, we have an absolute special between the one and only Magnus Carlsen and Ukrainian Mykola Bortnyk. The two know each other quite well by now as they have been playing games dating back to at least 2017. Mykola Bortnyk is not a grandmaster, so Magnus Carlsen should actually mop the floor with him, and yet Mykola is such a tricky type of player. Just a quick word on Mykola if you like. He is now a very active online player and ended 6 out of a total of 25 players participating in the recent title Tuesday. He only lost 2 games and draw once, which also means he won all his other games. In short, an outstanding all-round performance. Mykola faced Magnus Carlsen back in March on the 7th in round 6, so let's check out why this game made too much noise in the chess community. Was it the fact this had been a 1-minute bullet? Let us examine what happened here. Carlsen White started up the game with 1e4. Mykola answered with the Alekhine. Carlsen attacks the knight. And with Mykola adopting the modern style to the game, Carlsen opts for this move to solidify the pawn in the center. d6, challenging this pawn, led to Magnus to develop his kingside knight. Mykola too does the same thing with his queenside knight. And now with a straight c4, attacking the knight, Mykola returns the knight into b6. With Magnus choosing to take on d6, Mykola uses the e-pawn to capture. Carlsen immediately attacks the knight again. And with Mykola now jumping the knight into the center of the board, Carlsen was calculating whether he would need to swap or trade if you like. In the end, he did not. He developed the bishop. Mykola does take the knight. And with Carlsen capturing this knight with the bishop, Carlsen is ready and just about to castle. Mykola too was looking at the same option. He first developed the bishop into the 7th. Magnus Carlsen gets his king to safety. And with Mykola doing exactly the same thing, Carlsen preps this queen move. Was this a possible attempt to try and hold onto the pawn on c4? g6 by Mykola resulted to this knight to find his way into the game. Mykola in turn brings out the bishop into f6. And should the bishop here come under fire, this bishop can easily squeeze into the diagonal and provide a more solid position to the king. Carlsen bypassed this attack to something else. He first lined up the rook on the open file. Mykola in turn uses the pawn on g6 to attack the queen. And with Magnus looking how to make progress, he instantly places the bishop into place. As soon as this move appeared by Mykola, Carlsen knew this guy was no ordinary opponent. How he overcame any problem was via this bishop response right into h6. With the bishop coming off, Carlsen captures this bishop with the rook. And rather than swap or trade the rooks in the center, Mykola returns the knight to the 7th. Rook e1 doubling up resulted to the rook to come off, and the question to ask is how to eliminate this rook. Carlsen used the queen to do the job, and this 1-minute game looks solid. The knight on d7 is ready to attack the queen. The bishop on f6 stops the queen from penetrating into e7. But what if black were to take the knight and hand over the bishop? If this bishop is now removed and he has to knight e5 to block out the queen form, this file may cause some headache. If you go after this pawn, queen d7 stops everything and black has nothing to worry about. We saw nothing of the sort here. Mykola was not willing to trade the bishop to the knight, and for this reason he wanted to retain him at all costs. What he did was to retreat to try and trade the bishops off. With Carlsen accepting the challenge, Magnus opens up an escape path on the kingside. Mykola in turn tries this move to stop the knight from being able to slip into b5. And now with Magnus Carlsen marching with his king, Mykola brings his queen into the game by occupying this outpost. Queen e7 is most likely going to lead to the trade, and with the knight being automatically attacked, rook d8 should look strong enough to hold Magnus Carlsen at bay. But knowing how Magnus is with the white pieces and knowing he was not willing to get the queens to come off that easily, he backed off the queen to the 3rd. Mykola shoots off with this pawn on the king side, and with a simple h3, Mykola comes up with this break. Takes, and we can work out what is likely to happen if you get rid of this pawn from b5. This pawn is also most likely to drop, and even if you go on and eliminate this pawn on c7. Because the rook is attacked, this rook can swing over and remove this pawn on a2. Is this hypothetical position at all dangerous, and should Mykola worry? How far would this incoming check get you? King g8 looks safe because the queen on e3 is tied to the pawn on f2. Relax her guard from f2 and you will see an instant mate. What you can do in fact, is to go on and get rid of this pawn too. Queen f6, and knight e8, and if you repeat, this could lead to a perpetual. So when the pawns on b5 disappeared, Magnus could take on b5 with the bishop, but before that, he secured this pawn on the queen side by advancing him to the third. Knight b6 is how Mykola attempted to make progress, and this move in particular had a specific purpose. If you get rid of the pawn on b5, this central pawn also bites the dust, and the attack on the queen means that she would need to reposition somewhere safe. Queen d2 for example, and now this attack on the knight. And when the knight makes a 180 turn, this game, provided no mistakes are made, can easily lead to a draw. However, we had not seen this variation but something else. With Magnus Carlsen to move, this is how he tried to make progress. This gave rise to the knight to hunt after the queen. Magnus Carlsen repositions his queen to this square. And what Mykola could have done, which looks impossible given the duration of this game, was to remove this pawn, and should the knight fall, the idea is to take on the queen side and enforce this pin. This line would have been disastrous for Carlsen because how does anyone stop the attack on the knight and queen? Given the complexity of this line deploying the sacrifice, and given the nature of this game, Mykola misses this opportunity. He returned the knight to attack the queen. Magnus Carlsen repositions here right into the center of the board, and with Mykola now getting in this rook lift, what he does at the same time, is to secure the safety of this pawn on b5. Rook e3, resulted to the rook to come under fire using the knight. Magnus Carlsen in turn reciprocates the attack on the queen, and with Mykola here creating this type of challenge, this challenge is accepted, and with this renewed attack on the rook, what did Carlsen do? He lifted the rook into f4, but this was a very risky move forward. As soon as the rook was attacked again using this knight jump, right after the rook was slotted into this outpost, this pawn was eliminated, and Carlsen goes for the obvious. He used this attack and was about to recover the lost pawn. Knight back to d3, led to rook b3, and with the rook coming under fire for the north time, Carlsen removes this pawn. Mykola too goes on to capture this pawn on the queen side, and Magnus Carlsen in this point in time is fearing for the worst. He knows his position sucks, but he was still very smiley during the game. Knight e2, led to the knight to get attacked. Carlsen brings in his king to block the taking, but with the knight once again slotting into d3, what was Mykola cooking? He is looking at least another check from e5, but this is only if it is essential. Magnus went it very risky here. He went after the knight with his king, but with Mykola bringing back his rook into the third, he was for sure looking for some type of discovery. As soon as Carlsen pushed on with this pawn, Mykola uses this discovered check, and with Magnus Carlsen, who had seconds on his clock, locks in fact himself into a self-mate. How? It was via this incoming check with the pawn. As soon as Carlsen placed his king into this outpost, he already knew it was game over. Rook f3 check led to this forced king response, and Mykola instantly returns the knight into f7 to apply a check. And since the king has nowhere else to go, this is what you call a very effective checkmate, and Magnus Carlsen goes down as easily as that. And this is why this game was so very special, first for Mykola himself and second to all his fans who we cannot really name at this stage. The uniqueness of this game does not lie only in the ratings of each player, but maybe we need to be aware of who exactly Carlsen was up against. And many might be somewhat confused here. Who is Mykola and what is his relationship with Alexander? Alexander is a Ukrainian grandmaster. Mykola is his older brother, and despite his rating, his is only an international master. Mykola himself is extremely strong in rapid and bullet chess, and rightly so. As soon as Magnus Carlsen lost this game, he congratulated Mykola for winning a fair game. Mykola's performance was outstanding, and Carlsen did acknowledge he was outplayed. And this is just another game where Carlsen loses to an international master, but is it not the first time we get to see the strongest of grandmasters losing to much weaker non-professional players? We have an entire database to prove too many grandmasters have lost to those who are not, and in addition to this link that follows on the top right of your screen, we have another game where Magnus Carlsen himself hangs his own queen to someone who is not a professional chess player. We hope to bring this game out one day, and we will cross that bridge when we come to it. We sincerely hope you have enjoyed this bullet, and look forward to seeing you again with our return. God bless.